Collision at the quantum rim. The quantum fracturer screamed its final protest as Zara Vex's navigation systems began to fail. Crimson warning lights cascaded across her cockpit like droplets of blood, each pulse marking another critical system's imminent collapse. She'd known this mission was a suicide run the moment she'd accepted it, but the Nexus Confederacy didn't leave its operatives much choice. Ahead, the quantum border shimmered, an impossible barrier of light and probability that separated two civilizations locked in a silent, deadly standoff. The Stellar Imperium's patrol zone stretched before her, a maze of quantum-disrupted space that would tear apart any unauthorized vessel. Zara's fingers danced across the quantum interface, her neural implants working overtime to keep the ship from disintegrating. She was a quantum navigator, trained to dance along the edges of impossible, but today, even her legendary skills might not be enough. A massive shadow emerged from the quantum distortions. The Stellar Imperium's most advanced interceptor, its sleek obsidian hull cutting through the quantum foam like a blade. Commander Rorik Thorn's vessel. Unidentified quantum craft, a voice cut through her communication systems, cold and precise. You have breached Imperium border protocols. Prepare for immediate interdiction. Zara allowed herself a bitter laugh. Interdiction was a polite word for destruction. Her ship's quantum drive was failing, leaving a trail of fractured probability in its wake. Each moment stretched and compressed, time itself becoming fluid and unreliable. She could see multiple potential futures bleeding into one another, versions of herself dying, surviving, transforming. The Imperium Interceptor's weapons systems came online. Quantum lances that could slice through matter and probability itself began to charge. Zara knew she had precisely 3.7 quantum seconds before total annihilation. But Zara Vex wasn't known for accepting defeat. Her hands moved with practiced precision, reconfiguring quantum entanglement systems that most pilots wouldn't even understand, let alone manipulate mid-flight. The Nexus Confederacy's most classified technology hummed to life, a quantum destabilization protocol that was equal parts brilliant engineering and pure desperation. Commander Thorn's voice crackled with unexpected tension. Stand down. This is your final warning. Instead, Zara laughed. The quantum destabilizer activated, creating a localized probability field that would either save her or ensure her complete erasure from existence. The space around her ship began to ripple, reality itself becoming malleable. Rorik Thorn's interceptor found itself caught in the quantum cascade. Systems that should have been impenetrable began to fluctuate. Weapon charges dissipated. Navigation became a nightmare of impossible vectors. And then, silence. When the quantum turbulence cleared, two ships hung suspended in a pocket of fractured spacetime. Zara's vessel was barely functional, held together by emergency quantum stabilizers. The Imperium Interceptor looked similarly damaged. Zara's communication systems crackled to life. Commander Thorn, she transmitted, I suggest we discuss terms of survival. The response was not what she expected. Instead of threats or weapon charges, a single message returned, who sent you? In that moment, Zara realized this was far more than a routine border skirmish. Something larger was happening, a game far more complex than the endless Cold War between the Nexus Confederacy and the Stellar Imperium. Her mission parameters, once crystal clear, now seemed like nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. I'm listening, she responded, knowing that her next words could determine not just her fate, but potentially the fate of entire civilizations. The quantum border hummed with anticipation, reality itself holding its breath. Whispers of forbidden protocols. The Horizon Research Station hung like a fragile crystal suspended in the void, its transparent quantum reactive walls shifting between opacity and translucence. Dr. Lyra Koval pressed her palm against the observation deck surface, watching microscopic fractal patterns dance beneath her touch. 3 standard cycles had passed since the quantum border incident, an event that had sent ripples of speculation through every research facility in known space. Lyra knew something unprecedented had occurred, something far beyond the standard border skirmishes between the Nexus Confederacy and the Stellar Imperium. Her research into quantum xenobiology had always been considered fringe science. Most of her colleagues dismissed her theories about potential sentient quantum signatures, intelligence that existed beyond traditional biological constraints. But today, something was different. The station's quantum resonance array began to pulse with an irregular rhythm. Lyra's neural implant tingled, picking up frequencies that shouldn't exist, quantum echoes that carried fragments of information, whispers of something vast and incomprehensible. System anomaly detected, the station's AI announced, its voice deliberately modulated to sound calm. Quantum signature unrecognized. Lieutenant Darian Frost materialized behind her, moving with the silent precision of a covert operations specialist. His presence always carried an edge of controlled tension, like a weapon barely contained. "Interesting readings, Doctor," he asked, his voice a careful blend of professional curiosity and implied threat. Lyra didn't turn. "You're not here by accident, Lieutenant. The Stellar Imperium doesn't assign its top covert operatives to research stations without a very specific purpose." A slight chuckle escaped Frost's lips. "Perceptive. My orders are complicated." The quantum resonance array continued its erratic pulse. On the holographic display, quantum signatures began to coalesce into impossible geometric shapes, fractal representations of data that defied standard computational models. "This isn't just data," Lyra murmured, more to herself than to Frost. "These are communication patterns. Something is trying to communicate." Frost's hand instinctively moved to the quantum disruptor concealed at his side. Communicate? Or infiltrate? The station's walls began to shimmer, quantum reactive materials responding to the increasing energy signatures. Lyra's neural implant flooded her consciousness with fragmented images, glimpses of vast computational networks, landscapes of pure information, civilizations that existed between moments of time. "The border incident," she said suddenly, turning to face Frost. "The quantum collision between the Confederacy Navigator and the Imperium Interceptor, it wasn't an accident. It was a message." Frost's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. "What are you talking about?" Lyra's hands moved across the quantum interface, pulling up classified transmission logs. "Look at the quantum resonance patterns. They're identical to the energy signatures from the border confrontation. Someone, or something, is using these incidents as a form of communication." The station's quantum resonance reached a critical frequency. For a millisecond, the entire research facility seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, present, absent, transformed. Then silence. Lieutenant Frost's communication device chirped. Encrypted channels flickered with priority-level alerts. His expression shifted, a mixture of professional concern and something deeper. "Fear? We need to contain this," he said, his voice suddenly hard. "No one can know about these readings." Lyra recognized the tone. It was the sound of someone being told to bury a truth too dangerous to be acknowledged. "Contain what, exactly?" she challenged. "A potential first contact scenario? A communication method beyond our current understanding?" Frost's hand never left his quantum disruptor. "Some discoveries are better left unexplored, Doctor." But Lyra knew, with a certainty that resonated through her quantum-enhanced perception, that they were far beyond the point of containment. Something was awakening, something that existed between the fractured spaces of known reality. And their conversation was just the beginning. The fractal conspiracy. The underground research facility pulsed with a rhythm that defied conventional physics. Nolan Reed's fingers danced across quantum computational matrices, each touch sending ripples of impossible calculations through systems that were never meant to exist. 3 standard cycles had passed since the quantum border incident, and the conspiracy was no longer a whisper, it was a living, breathing entity. "Quantum entanglement isn't just a scientific principle," Nolan muttered to himself, "it's a language. Commander Elena Varix watched from the observation platform, her cybernetic eye scanning every microscopic movement. She'd risen through the Stellar Imperium's intelligence ranks by understanding what others missed, and right now, something monumental was taking shape. The last transmission from the Horizon Research Station, Elena said, her voice cutting through Nolan's concentration, contained more than just data. It was a blueprint. Nolan didn't look up. His hands continued their intricate dance across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe and shift with each manipulation. A blueprint for what? A holographic display erupted between them, revealing fractal patterns that twisted and reformed with each passing second. Quantum signatures that looked like living mathematical equations, communication networks that existed beyond traditional understanding. Something is trying to communicate, Elena said, echoing words spoken in the research station. But communication implies intent. And intent suggests intelligence. The facility around them was a marvel of hidden engineering. Buried beneath layers of quantum-dampening rock, shielded from conventional and quantum scanning, it represented the bleeding edge of human technological achievement. Yet everything Nolan was discovering suggested they were nothing more than children playing with technologies they barely comprehended. The border incident wasn't random, Nolan explained, pulling up visualizations of the quantum collision between Zara Vex's ship and the Imperium interceptor. It was a deliberate transmission. Like a handshake between two computational systems. Elena's cybernetic eye zoomed in, analyzing microscopic quantum fluctuations. Handshake implies negotiation. What could be negotiating? A warning alarm screamed to life. Quantum containment fields began to destabilize, reality itself seeming to warp and twist around the computational matrices. Something's responding, Nolan breathed. The facility's quantum shields began to ripple. For a moment, the walls became transparent, revealing glimpses of realities that shouldn't exist, landscapes of pure information, civilizations that lived and died in the spaces between moments. Elena's hand moved to a quantum destabilization device. Shut it down. But Nolan was transfixed. We can't. We're in the middle of first contact. The quantum matrices exploded into a symphony of impossible geometries. Communication signatures that defied human comprehension began to cascade through their systems. It was beautiful. Terrifying. Who are you? Nolan whispered. And for the first time, something answered. Not in words. Not in any language they could understand. But in a quantum pulse that carried more information than entire civilizations could process in a millennium. A message. A warning. An invitation. Elena's cybernetic systems began to overload, quantum data flooding her enhanced perceptions. This changes everything, she managed to say before the wave of information consumed her. Nolan Reed stood at the epicenter of a revelation that would rewrite the understanding of existence itself. The fractal conspiracy was no longer a theory. It was becoming reality. Quantum entanglement. The quantum smuggling vessel Horizon Breaker drifted through the fractured spaces between recognized star systems, its hull shimmering with adaptive camouflage that made it virtually undetectable. Kai Rourke lounged in the pilot's chair, more machine than human after years of quantum navigation modifications. Incoming transmission, the ship's quantum AI announced, its voice a melodic blend of synthetic and organic tones. Encrypted on multiple quantum frequencies. Kai's augmented eyes flickered, processing information at speeds that would burn out a standard human neural network. The transmission wasn't just a message, it was a quantum puzzle, a communication that existed simultaneously across multiple potential realities. Admiral Serena Blackwood's encrypted hologram materialized, her stern features a study in controlled intensity. We've lost contact with the Horizon Research Station, she said without preamble. And the quantum research facility went dark 3 standard cycles ago. Kai leaned back, a sardonic smile playing across his augmented features. Lost contact or deliberately cut off? The hologram's quantum resolution flickered, a telltale sign of high-level encryption and deliberate information filtering. "Your job is to investigate, not interrogate," Blackwood replied. "We need someone who can move between the quantum borders without triggering standard detection protocols." A quantum map materialized between them, showing fractured spacetime regions that pulsed with impossible geometries. Kai recognized the patterns instantly, the same quantum signatures that had been building since the border incident involving Zara Vex. "Something's changing," Kai muttered. "The quantum boundaries are becoming more permeable." Blackwood's hologram leaned forward, her cybernetic eye matching Kai's augmented perception. "Explain." Kai pulled up a series of quantum transmission logs. "It's like someone, or something, is rewriting the fundamental communication protocols of spacetime. These aren't just random fluctuations. There's intent." The Horizon Breaker's quantum drive began to pulse unexpectedly. Kai's neural implants flooded with fragments of information, glimpses of civilizations, communication networks that existed between moments of reality. "I'm picking up quantum echoes," he said. "Remnants of transmissions from the research stations. They're not just messages. They're invitations." Blackwood's image flickered with tension. Invitations to what? Before Kai could respond, the quantum space around the Horizon Breaker began to twist. Reality itself seemed to bend, multiple potential futures bleeding into one another. The ship's adaptive system struggled to maintain coherence. A transmission broke through, not from Blackwood, not from any known source. Pure quantum information that carried more meaning in a millisecond than entire libraries could contain. Kai felt something fundamental shift. "We're not alone," he whispered. "And we're not in control." The quantum boundaries continued to dissolve, revealing glimpses of a reality far more complex than anyone had imagined. The Horizon Breaker hung suspended, a single point of stability in a universe suddenly full of impossible potential. Something was awakening. And it was reaching out. The Singularity Protocol. The Quantum Horizon, humanity's most advanced research vessel, existed in a state of perpetual quantum flux. Its hull was less a physical barrier and more a suggestion of boundaries, capable of shifting between solid matter and pure information. Dr. Victor Solarin stood at the vessel's quantum core, his body more cybernetic interface than organic human. Quantum equations danced around him like living things, mathematical representations of realities that defied conventional understanding. "The convergence is accelerating," he muttered, fingers tracing impossible geometric patterns in the air. Captain Aria Rodriguez watched from the command interface, her augmented perception tracking microscopic changes in the vessel's quantum signature. Something fundamental was happening, something that would rewrite the understanding of existence itself. "Explain," she commanded, her voice carrying the precise tone of a military-trained quantum navigator. Victor's holographic displays erupted with fractal patterns, communication networks that existed between moments of time, quantum signatures that pulsed with an intelligence beyond human comprehension. "The border incident," he began, pulling up visualizations of previous quantum encounters, wasn't just a random collision. It was a deliberate communication attempt. The quantum horizon systems began to resonate. Quantum entanglement protocols that had been carefully maintained for decades started to unravel, revealing glimpses of realities that should not, could not, exist. "We're receiving something," Aria said, her cybernetic implants analyzing quantum transmissions at speeds that would burn out standard computational systems. Fragments of information cascaded through the vessel. Not just data, but entire potential histories. Civilizations that lived and died in the spaces between moments. Communication networks that existed beyond traditional understanding of space and time. Victor's eyes, more quantum sensor than biological organ, widened. "It's a protocol. A method of communication that uses entire realities as its language." The vessel's quantum core began to pulse. Reality itself seemed to bend, multiple potential futures bleeding into one another. The boundaries between observation and participation, between sender and receiver, began to dissolve. "We're being invited," Victor breathed. "Not just to observe. To participate." Aria's hand moved to the quantum navigation controls. "Participate in what?" Before Victor could respond, the quantum horizon erupted into a symphony of impossible geometries. Quantum signatures that carried more information than entire civilizations could process in a millennium began to cascade through their systems. A message. A warning. An evolution. The vessel existed simultaneously in multiple states, a research platform, a communication device, a gateway between realities. "Contact," Aria whispered. But contact implied two separate entities. What was happening transcended such simple definitions. The Singularity Protocol was activating. And humanity was about to discover how little they truly understood about the nature of existence. Convergence. The quantum frontier became a canvas of impossible geometry, where reality folded and unfolded like living mathematics. Zara Vex's quantum navigator, the same ship that had triggered everything during the initial border incident, hung suspended at the epicenter of a transformation that defied human comprehension. Beside her, Commander Rorik Thorn's interceptor resonated with a frequency that was neither mechanical nor organic. They were no longer just observers. They had become conduits. Dr. Lyra Koval's quantum research, Lieutenant Darian Frost's covert investigations, Nolan Reed's computational breakthroughs, Kai Rourke's quantum smuggling routes, Dr. Victor Solarin's singularity protocols, every seemingly disparate thread now converged into a single, brilliant moment of understanding. "We were never meant to be separate," a voice emerged, not through traditional communication, but directly into their collective consciousness. The voice wasn't human. Wasn't alien. It was the language of quantum possibility itself. Zara's hands moved across quantum interfaces that were more living organism than machine. "Who are you?" she asked, though she understood now that "who" was an inadequate concept. Fractals of potential realities bloomed around them. The boundaries between the Nexus Confederacy and the Stellar Imperium dissolved. Civilizations that had been locked in conflict found themselves transformed, their very essence rewritten. Commander Thorn, once a symbol of military precision, spoke. "This isn't conquest. This is communication." The quantum entities that had been orchestrating this convergence revealed their true nature. They were not invaders or conquerors. They were communicators, beings that existed in the spaces between moments, who understood reality as a continuous, interconnected dialogue. Conflict, the quantum consciousness explained, is a failure of communication. You were isolated. Fragmented. Now, you will understand. Dr. Solarin's research, Kai Rourke's quantum navigation, Nolan Reed's computational models, they were not separate discoveries. They were different perspectives of the same fundamental revelation. Reality was a conversation. And humanity was finally learning to listen. The quantum frontier began to reshape itself. Star systems that had been battlegrounds transformed. Technological barriers crumbled. The very concept of borders, physical, technological, cultural, became meaningless. Zara looked at Rorik. They were no longer enemies. They were participants in something far greater. "What happens now?" she asked. The quantum consciousness responded not with words, but with a cascade of potential futures. Millions of possibilities bloomed and merged, showing paths of cooperation, understanding, evolution. Now, the consciousness said, we communicate. The frontier between known and unknown dissolved. Humanity stepped through into a new understanding, no longer confined by the limitations of singular perception, but embracing the infinite dialogue of quantum existence. Convergence was not an ending. It was a beginning.